So, if you clicked on this video, you're probably familiar with this man, King Henry VIII. He is perhaps one of England's best known monarchs and is rather famous for having 6 wives. However, what you might not know about King Henry is that he had over 60 houses and palaces. Some of these were taken from his friends, some of them were taken from his wives. But, out of all of these houses, his favourite was Hampton Court Palace. So, today we're going to discuss some insane facts about Hampton Court Palace, specifically during the time of Henry VIII. Hi, my name is Bose. I have an MA in Early Modern English History, and on this channel we talk about the history you don't learn about in school. And in this video we will look at Hampton Court, the gift to the king, why Hampton Court was Henry's favourite palace, the entertainment at Hampton Court, the royal kitchens, and the diet of the court. Prior to the Tudor era, an existing house had been on the site of Hampton Court, but by 1514, Thomas Wolsey had acquired the site and had started to make some major changes. Wolsey, the supposed son of a butcher, had risen quickly through the ranks of the Tudor court, becoming a statesman, cardinal, and the Lord Chancellor. Wolsey began to transform Hampton Court into a house fit to entertain both king and foreign dignitaries alike. When Wolsey realised that he was falling out of favour with King Henry, he decided to offer Hampton Court to Henry as a gift, or perhaps more accurately a bribe, in order to try and get back into Henry's good graces. Wolsey would continue adding to Hampton Court though, until he failed to secure Henry's marriage annulment to Catherine of Aragon. Wolsey would then be accused of treason, and he would be sent to London to be tried. However, he died en route. Henry would then take a very personal interest in the expansion and rebuilding of Hampton Court, as he prepared it for his mistress and future queen, Anne Boleyn. So, why did Hampton Court become Henry's favourite house? Well, it's because of its size. Henry's court had over 450 courtiers, who needed to be fed, watered, and entertained. All these courtiers also had servants, and Henry had his own royal servants, which meant that there could be over 1,000 people who needed to be put up. Few houses in the country were big enough to do this, but Hampton Court was, making it a firm favourite in Henry's eyes. Henry would do a series of renovations to Hampton Court Palace, which would cost in the millions in today's money. These included building new Queen's lodgings for Anne Boleyn, which she herself helped design, a chamber for the King's Council, and his own private lodgings, which would have hot and cold running water, which was phenomenally rare at the time. Among Henry's additions were 2 bowling alleys, an indoor tennis court, and a serious expansion to the kitchens in order to be able to feed the royal court. Perhaps Henry's most significant addition, though, was the Great Hall. Today, Hampton Court has been described as a hotel and entertainment complex for Henry's court, and this is largely because of a 1530s edition of the Great Hall. It is the biggest room in the palace and is over 106 feet long, and skilled tradesmen were brought in from all over England and Europe in order to make it. The Great Hall would be used every day by the lower members of the court for eating and entertainment. But on special occasions, such as the 1546 French embassy visit, special tapestries would be hung from the walls and candelabras would be strung across the room on wires. For entertainment, plays would be put on, some of which Henry even starred in himself, usually playing a heroic figure rescuing maidens. Now, all of these people needed feeding, and Hampton Court kitchens had over 200 kitchen staff at one point, in order to feed these 450 courtiers twice a day, usually at 10 and 4, every day. As a result, the kitchens could produce over 1,600 meals daily, as well as separate meals for the king, which were produced in a separate kitchen. Hampton Court has the largest surviving Renaissance kitchen in Europe, and it takes up over 1/3 of this massive building's ground floor. So, What type of food did those sitting in the Great Court eat? Well, the diet of a Tudor courtier revolved around meat. Vegetables were considered the food of the poor people, and many courtiers had a great distrust of any form of salad. I was unable to find the figures for Henry's court, but at the court of Elizabeth I, Henry's daughter, the court ate in 1 year over 8,200 sheep, 2,330 deer, and 1,870 pigs, not to mention the other animals they ate, such as oxen, wild boars, fish, and a startling number of birds, including swans and peacocks. The meat would typically be roasted on a spit, as roast meat was a sign of wealth and luxury in the Tudor era. People, usually young boys, would have been specifically employed to turn the spits with the meat on. And it should be noted that Elizabeth's court was much less food-orientated than Henry's, so the figures for Henry's court would have likely been much higher. And let's also not forget about what the courtiers drank. Records show that the court consumed over 600,000 gallons of beer and 300 barrels of wine each year. Historians have even estimated that the average Tudor courtier eating this diet would consume around 4,500 to 5,000 calories every day. Hampton Court has an incredibly rich history that we have barely scratched the surface of today. Nearly a dozen monarchs would use it until 1737, when King George II would transform it into the apartments for the Grace and Favour residents. I hope you've enjoyed this week's topic, and make sure you join us again next week for another really random, really interesting video on history. That's all for now. Bye!